Marriage, from God's perspective, is designed for two imperfect people to demonstrate and express God's love, daily grace, resulting in showing the love between Jesus and the church to the world and producing godly offspring.
So I think marriage is a really great thing that God has designed on a personal level, help us to become better Christians, but on a kingdom level to procreate and raise people who can live for God.
Interesting. What is your idea of love in marriage?
Love fades away when you stop practicing love.
If you look at how 1 Corinthians describes love, it's not describing a feeling. It says love is patience. Patience is not a feeling. Patience is something you decide to do. You don't feel patient. You build it into your character. Love is kind. Kindness is not a feeling. Love does not seek its own. That's not a feeling.
Why is communication such a big deal, a big problem in marriage?
God did not give us the ability to read minds. Yeah, the only way of expression of what is in you is to say it out. So when we cannot communicate at the same level in understanding, then there's no way we can connect. God's designed marriage for himself, for us, for his own pleasure. The other things are the by the way benefit that comes to us. And that's where the foundation problem in marriage starts from. When we seek to derive what the designer has not put into it.
But you said something about people getting married for compatibility and attraction and all of those. And while those can be factors, people need to be careful to weight those factors properly. In the course of a marriage, people are changing. At least if you're a growing Christian, you're going to be changing.
Very true.
So the person that you got married to 20 years ago, if they're growing and changing, would not be the person that you're married to right now. If that person changes and grows over the life of the marriage and you don't change and grow, you will become incompatible.
So you're saying that when people do not have an understanding of God's purpose for marriage and God's intent and intention, and then if that foundation has been misplaced, that is a recipe for crisis in marriage. You are welcome to this edition of The Voyage. And this is an interesting and exciting edition because we are not just going to be talking about the voyage of an individual, but on this edition, we will be talking about the voyage of marriage, right? Every marriage go through trial. Every marriage go through transitions, and I hope every marriage will also go through seasons of triumphs. So I have two special guests with me today that I will call experts, in a sense, in the field of marriage. I see them laughing, and they may not regard themselves as an expert, but we will soon find out on this voyage as we explore this interesting and exciting session together that you will also find interesting. So I have Wole and Hayo, very dear friends, are on this show today. So let's dive in straight into the voyage of marriage. Let's start from the beginning and not make any assumption. What is marriage all about? What is marriage? So anyone?
I think the expert should.
Yes, I agree with that. I don't agree with that. Well, marriage, from God's perspective, is designed for two imperfect people, to demonstrate and express God's love, daily grace, resulting in showing the love of Jesus, the love between Jesus and the church to the world and producing godly offspring.
Interesting. Wole?
Oh, well, I mean, it's good you started with the experts. I'm just going to try to give, a more, Maybe it's the way to describe it is to think about how I've seen my marriage, right? My marriage, to my mind, is the tool that God has used to help me develop Christian character. I think living in close proximity to someone who's different from you with the goal of coming into complete union and unity means that need to constantly sacrifice yourself, which is one of the fundamentals of being a believer, gets an opportunity to get lived out on a day-by-day basis. So I think marriage is a really great thing that God has designed to, on a personal level, help us to become better Christians. But on a kingdom level, to procreate and raise people who can live for God. So I think God has those two objectives and maybe several others in mind in designing the institution of marriage that helps us to become better people ourselves, and that helps us to bring good people into the world and train them for God.
So it appears to me that both of you are saying that marriage is not primarily for one's pleasure. That marriage is not primarily for your own satisfaction. Because, when you see two people or a young guy looking for somebody to marry, well, they are looking for someone that is compatible, someone that will make them laugh. Some people will say, I'm looking for someone that will pay my bills, right? So help me to understand this, your idea of marriage that is not primarily based on seeking your own pleasure, your satisfaction, but rather seeking God's satisfaction and also character transformation. I'm curious to know more.
Well, the way I like to express this is maybe a gadget.
Okay.
Why was this your iPhone designed? We can have what I regard as a false impression that, the designer designed it for me because I needed to communicate. No, that's far from the truth. It's first about him.
Okay.
Now, those other things that are benefiting you are probably the attraction for you to get you in. Probably the designer wants to make a name. That will be the origin. Or he wants to make a fame, wants to make wealth. Those are his primary concern. So the same thing with marriage. I believe that God's designed marriage for himself first, for his own pleasure. The other things are the by the way benefit that comes to us. So, and that's where the foundation problem in marriage starts from. When we seek to derive what the designer has not put into it.
Wow. So you're saying that when people do not have an understanding of God's purpose for marriage and God's intent and intention, and then if that foundation has been misplaced, that is a recipe for crisis in marriage.
Yeah.
Wow. Wale?
Yeah. Yeah, so just to ride on what Aya said, I think God is so wise, like immeasurably wise, that he has the capacity to do something that serves many purposes. So on one hand, marriage has certain purposes for him. On the other hand, it serves certain purposes for us. But ultimately, all those purposes are intertwined. Because when God achieves his purposes, it is for our benefits, right? And when we achieve purposes that God designed us for, it is for his benefit. So it's all sort of woven together in such an intricate way that it's not as easy to pull them apart. But you said something about people getting married for compatibility and attraction and all of those. And while those can be factors, people need to be careful to weight those factors properly. Because compatibility, for instance, in the course of a marriage, people are changing. at least if you're a growing Christian, you're going to be changing.
Very true.
So the person that you got married to 20 years ago, if they're growing and changing, would not be the person that you're married to right now. So if you were compatible 20 years ago, you're probably non-compatible right now if you want to think about that in a strict sense of this is this person at this point and I like them and it worked and all of that, we clicked. If that person changes and grows over the life of the marriage and you don't change and grow, you will become incompatible. So people need to understand those from a broader lens. What does it mean to be compatible over the life of the marriage? Not just at the point that they decided to get married.
So when people say I'm in love or we fall out of love, what is your take on this statement, or what do you think is underneath this statement? And to tag along that question is love sufficient to sustain a marriage? Or maybe to start from, what is your idea of love in marriage?
Okay, so I think that's a better place to start, because once you don't have your definitions agreed on, you can just travel in different directions in the conversation. So, because sometimes people say it's love enough, they need to define what love is before they say, is it enough?
Correct.
If you don't have, an agreed definition for what love is, then you can't determine if it's enough or not. So maybe I should tell us what love is, and then, we can determine if it's enough, if it's adequate for marriage.
I would see love as a commitment to the other person's well-being. It's Jesus said in Revelation, says, you have left your first love. It didn't disappear. And love is not just a feeling. You left it. So love fade away when you stop practicing love. It's a daily, deliberate action. Love is kind. So to say that love disappeared, no, you left it because it's a daily practice.
Okay, so I was just going to write on that, to say love, and when I was courting my wife, the way that I communicated to her is that love is a decision. I've decided, that I'm going to, love you. And if you look at how 1 Corinthians describes love, it's not describing a feeling. It says love is patience. Patience is not a feeling. Patience is something you decide to do. You don't feel patient. You build it into your character. Love is kind. Kindness is not a feeling. Love does not seek its own. That's not a feeling. That's, a decision and an action, that you take off of, your understanding of what you should be doing. So I agree completely with him that love is essentially something that you do. It's a decision you make, and ultimately is acting in the other person's best interest. So the question again is it enough?
So when we look at this definition of love as a deliberate, intentional decision to be committed to the well-being of the other person, to go back to that question, that is it enough? That it is not. It is, like you said earlier on, one can decide to love today, and tomorrow you can decide not to love again. So it all goes back to the decision and the commitment of the parties that are involved in the relationship. But there will be reasons for that decisions. So to tie that what are the reasons why someone that say, wow, you are the sugar in my tea, you are the butterfly in my cupboard, you are the one that make me feel on top of the world today. And then tomorrow they will say, God forbid the day I set my eyes on you. What happened to that love? What happened to that decision? And possibly, what are some of the baggages that people bring into marriage that cause things like this?
From the definition of love that we have given, I believe that love is sufficient. Love is the greatest. Now, the scenario you have painted is premised on a wrong definition of love. And we get into that situation when love becomes transactional,
Wow.
in that you do me, I do you.
So it's not like a contractual agreement.
That's like a contractual agreement. You do this, I do this. When you make me feel good, I love you. When you do what I want, I love you. When you make me sad, then
I choose not to.
I choose not to. So when love becomes transactional, Jesus' example, while we're yet sinners, he died for us. And his love is constant. So when you love for what you get, it becomes an issue. So that becomes a momentary, situational love. But the love that we have spoken about, for instance, love is patient. So when you are not even meeting up to my expectations, if there is love, the love requires me to wait more. Love is long-suffering. And so even when I experience displeasure, pains, the love keeps me on. So that type of love, the kind of love we have described, is what makes the difference in marriages.
Wow. So will you say that not having this understanding of well plays is the root cause of conflict in marriages?
Oh yeah, for sure. Your understanding of these concepts will determine, how you engage in that relationship, right? Just to flesh out a bit more on what I just said. If your love is contingent on what the other party does, that negates the definition of love in 1 Corinthians 13. It says, love seeketh not our own. So love is not, focused on what benefits it. It's focused on just serving the other person. Now, that doesn't mean we treat it flippantly like that's easy to do. That's not easy to do, okay? That's why it's a daily consecration and a daily commitment. And having a more robust, just mindset about what you're signed up to. One of the things, I think this will be Psalm 15, where it says, who shall ascend into the hill of the Lord and all that. It says those who have sworn, even and fulfill their promise even when it hurts. If you read it in the New Living Translation. So love is not that things are going well. It has nothing to do with how well things are going or not going. It's that you've signed up to a commitment and you're seeing it through for better, for worse. Okay, so if that's the concept that you come into marriage with, then many difficulties are easier to handle. But if you come in with the concept of for better, for best, it means only when things are going well and going better, then that marriage works. If things aren't going the way you anticipated, then you are out. You step out. And you asked earlier if, people can fall out of love and all that. If we're sticking with the definition in 1 Corinthians 13, that portion ends by saying love never fails.
Wow.
So it's entirely a function of what premise you're starting off on. Now we can unpack the implications of you living by that premise and the other party not living by that premise, because there are dimensions of it that can be unpacked. For instance, where there's physical violence.
Okay.
You can continue to love, but removing yourself from harm's way. So there are many dimensions that you probably deal with on a case-by-case basis. But on a general basis, no, you don't fall out of love. You decide that you don't want to love this person again. When they came to ask Jesus about this question, he said, the only reason Moses gave you, that caveat is because of the hardness of heart. So it's really about you. It's not about the situations. You're just hardened your heart to say, I'm not going to accept this. Okay. And yeah, so if we stick with the premise, love is enough.
Interesting. One issue that I've seen come across in several, when people talk about challenges in marriage, is lack of communication, or it doesn't get me, it doesn't understand what I'm saying, or we don't communicate at the same level. Why is communication such a big deal, a big problem in marriage?
Well, I will say it's communication is a symptom of a bigger disease. And there will be lack of communication if you seek to be heard before being heard. If you seek to, most times when we talk to be understood, not to understand the other person. Now, and all of this, as far as I'm concerned, is premised out of self, pride. So it's a big issue because God did not give us the ability to read minds. Yeah, the only way of expression of what is in you is to say it out. So when we cannot communicate at the same level in understanding, then there's no way we can connect. Because the only way to make yourself known, to express what is in your mind, is to say it out. When we don't do that, we give room for assumptions, which most often will be wrong, will not be accurate, and then it leads to bigger problem.
Well, before you respond to that, tag along this idea that as men communicate differently as to women. And I've seen cases where when you said, God does not give us the ability to read mind, I laugh because that's one thing that I've seen several wives to say, that it's as if my husbands don't need to read his mind, But as men, well, generally, men use fewer words to express themselves. And in some cases, much more fewer. So when this idea of communication, looking at it from the way a woman, a wife communicates and a man communicates, thinking about the psychological and the, build-up of a man, how can communication be improved and enhanced in relationships?
I think in pretty much every aspect of marriage, there's a need for willingness to change, right? Yes, men naturally, most men use fewer words. Like for most men, the response to how was your day is, oh, it was fine. It's okay. And that's not the response that my wife is looking for.
Yeah.
My wife is looking for a blow-by-blow account of how the day went. If you can drill it down to what happened every hour of the day, that's the expectation. I think both of us are imperfect because I don't think that level of detail is always required. And I don't think it was okay is always adequate. So I think both of us need to learn to adjust. I need to be able to give more information, and she probably needs to be able to require less. Okay. But I think men in particular struggle with communication, and that's probably because we're not looking enough to Jesus, right? Because if there was an effective communicator, he was the one, right? And communication is not just the words that we say, it's just entirely how we engage with people, what we say, how we act, and all of that. And one thing in scripture that I'm always, wondering and amused about is when Jesus went to the tomb of Lazarus. At that point, Jesus knew he was going to just raise Lazarus. why did he need to cry? Right? John 11:45 says Jesus wept. An entire verse just describing that Jesus wept. Like, I'm saying, was it necessary? Like, I'm going to raise Lazarus right now, but it just shows how he's able to connect with people. And he wept just because of them, not because he had any despair about what was going to happen next. He knew that, he says, Father, the reason I'm saying this is because of them, because I know you always hear. And so he knew he was going to raise Lazarus, but men need to be able to come to terms with that emotional part that many of us have locked away and never, engage with. And that's partly part of our culture, being Africans and all of that, where men are supposed to be, rock solid or movable and all of that. And this is one challenge that I have frequently with my wife. She's always saying, oh, you always act as if you don't have any needs. Because, like, you're not supposed to have a need. Like, how are you doing? I'm doing fine. Yeah, well, what's going in your mind? Nothing. So, and all of that. So I think we need to look more and more to Jesus and just be able to touch base with our wives on that emotional plane, while not necessarily reducing ourselves to just an emotional being, because that itself is not also necessary or good.
What are some unrealistic expectations that young couples or somebody planning to get married that they usually have? And what is one truth that you will wish every young man or girl out there that is planning to get married would know before getting married?
Unrealistic expectations. Maybe let me sort of switch that around and say that some of the things that I found most attractive about my wife are also some of the sources of greatest arguments in our family, right? In our marriage, right? My wife is an extremely detailed and meticulous person, gets things done effectively. That's very attractive. But on the other side, that can seem like a bit too much to handle. All right. So I think people need to sign up to a whole person, right, when they're getting into marriage, and not sign up for attributes. Right? Because
Say that again.
Yeah, sign up for the whole person. That person may rub you right today and rub you wrong tomorrow, and not just sign up for an attribute. Because if you like something and you see the flip side of that thing, you may not like it.
True.
Okay. So that's just talking about expectations, that sign up for the whole person.
The good and the bad.
The good and the bad. Okay. We're both on a journey to get better. Don't expect that person to have completed their journey while you are still on your own. If you're getting better, give room for them to get better.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, the second question is, what do I wish young people knew before they got into marriage? I think most people who are about to get into marriage are not listening to any cast. Right? So what I wish they knew was that a lot of their decisions are not objective. Okay? A lot of their decisions are colored by emotion at that point. They need to listen to people who genuinely care about them and who are able to stay objective, because they are not emotionally entangled in that relationship. They are outside of it and they can give objective feedback. They just need to ascertain that this person wants their best interest. Right? So I wish young people would, not trust their emotions too much. A mix of hormones and all of those things drive a number of those relationships. And I wish that they'll listen more to wise counsel, especially from people that they trust.
Interesting. Yeah. Hayo, tell me about one trial that has shaped who you are becoming as a father and as a husband in your marriage.
We talk, he's just been talking about expectations. And I think it is common to all. We all have expectations, even the ones you yourself don't identify before you get him. And one of the things that informed or influenced our expectations where we're coming from, who we have been. True. For instance, if you are somebody who grew up in an environment that is if you grew up in an environment, probably you have been your trust has been betrayed in the past. Then you come into a relationship, you're overprotective, you are not willing to be vulnerable. Now, for me, when I came into marriage, where I was coming from influenced what my expectation is. For instance, in my house when I grew up, when we're growing up, if I come home from school sometimes, we were living in a 4 or 5 bedroom apartment. And I can come home and at time to sleep, I'll be wondering, where am I sleeping? And I could just sleep on the rug in the sitting room because we usually have people in and out of our house. And so when I got married, I thought, and so the thing is to say, oh, this person is coming. I always say, no, I just want me and
my husband
this weekend. And start looking at me, what kind of human being is this? Is it that I was almost accusing of, you hate people, you don't, is this the love that we
promised me?
or that we're taught to love our friends, love our neighbors? So I was seeing it much more from a wrong angle until when I was able to align my preference to my upbringing and our preference to her upbringing. I remember that when I was to get married to my wife, she needed to meet countless of uncles and aunties. But on her own side, I didn't need to meet anybody apart from her siblings. So I realized that, our growing up was exclusively their nuclear family. But for me, I have tens of cousins and so when I realized that, my approach to it changed. And gradually she started adjusting to, so now we are at the middle point. It's in the past. It's no longer an issue. We have come to a place that we can align. We've influenced each other with these different upbringing. And for me, one thing that has helped me most in my marriage is that I'm focused more on being the right person, being the right spouse, much more than expecting her to be the right person. If my primary focus is, okay, who will God have me be in this relationship? And the scripture that always come in my mind is that I'll be ready to punish all disobedience when my own obedience is complete. I got to a place that the things that when my wife does something that agitates me, it first draws me to, is there an area of my life I'm walking in disobedience? It's usually call my attention to that, not about her first. And so when I realize, I need to sort this out before I can talk about her own. I have to be in a place that my own obedience to God is complete before I can have the right to talk about someone else's disobedience.
Interesting. Well, let's talk about transitions in marriage. It is inevitable. All marriages will go through one form of transition or the other, either childbirth, either change in career, either change in health. How can couples go through these different forms of transitions without losing their intimacy?
Yeah, again, I would say, a certain level of deliberateness and flexibility is required. So we've gone through many transitions in our own family. At some point, my wife wanted to get, a master's degree. They required her, for instance, to not be in Nigeria for a couple of months. We had pretty young kids. I think my youngest was 2 and the oldest was 5 at the time. And because at that season of life, we didn't want other people in our home, raising our kids. It meant I was working a full-time job. I was in paid employment at the time, and I had 2 very young kids to look after. So like get up, prep them for school, pack their food, drop them off, go to work, come back, pick them up for a couple of months. But if you come from the premise that love is fundamentally about working in the best interest of that other person, it was clear in our minds that getting that additional degree was important for us as a family. So yeah, you have to do this, go do it. Right? And not long after that, she then got this job transition. And like in church circles, this is sort of thing that, is a really big testimony where her previous salary became her tithe. So that's like 10x. Okay. So in helping her, I was helping the family.
True.
Okay. So yeah, I think it's about flexibility and being intentional to say, how can I change my schedule to be able to work with what we need to get done right now? And we went through that season, and it was a great season. And then later on, she wanted to do a PhD, and we sort of did the same thing. And some of the best memories that my kids have was when my wife went to do a PhD. So I had to get creative as a dad and just sort of set up some fun activities for them. And every time, at least my son reminds me, we used to have what we call Mystery Monday. And why Mystery Monday? I wanted to be very deliberate about saying that work is not my Lord, right? That I'm going to not go to work on Mondays. At that point, I was running my businesses. I was not going to go to work on a Monday. I was going to spend time with my kids.
Wow.
So we did Mystery Monday, where we put, like different potential activities into a basket, and then you do a lucky dip. And whatever you picked, that's where we were going to that day. That's it. And my kids have really good memories of that season. So for me, I often, for instance, people often say to young women that, if you want to do masters, you better do it now. Once you marry, it's not possible. I'm like, no. My wife did a master's when we were married and started a PhD when we were married. Like, marriage is not a barrier to those sort of things. So we've managed those transitions, I'll say, fairly well. My wife has also been stellar at managing transitions that I've had in my career. So from quitting a job, when she was 1 month due with our last child, and she was still a public servant at the time, not earning a lot of money. Just, I'm with you on this. This is a decision you have made. Let's go for it. So just working together as a team, knowing ultimately that your life is in God's hands, and that if you're taking a step of faith out of trying to honor God and be there for the other person, that it will work out well. Wow. Like your life can't fall apart if you were trying to honor God. He will take the good and the bad and make it all work together for good. Yeah.
So in some of the instances that you have shared, so how were you still able to maintain the intimacy between you and your wife?
I think it was really about talking frequently. And when people hear intimacy in marriage, they often just put it in the sex box. And it's much larger than that, right? So we talk frequently. We talk quite a bit. And some of it, again, thanks to my wife, who is a very structured person. So for the very early years of my marriage, my wife like, we need to have like a weekly date. I'm like, you don't have to be so structured now. Like, let it just flow. Let it just happen naturally. We need to talk. So now we do have a weekly, time out, and we do speak at a time during the course of our work day. So we don't only see in the morning and in the evenings. In the middle of the work day, we have time that we sort of talk, and all of that. So I think she's helped us with structure it's not my natural disposition to fit into all of that, but my general, way of dealing with that is if I think that this is going to help us, even if it's ideal, generally want to go along with it. So talking a lot helps to just preserve that intimacy. We're also very, our kids, we tell them, look, you guys came and met us. We already existed, right? So from very early on, when we have them, we try to get them into their rooms and their spaces. We don't, sort of let them stay in our rooms for very long.
Interesting. So, Ayel, earlier on, you talk about marriage as being a tool for transformation, right? So how does the spiritual journey of either the husband or the wife influence the rhythm and the dynamics in the home?
Well, from what is last contribution, marriage is a partnership, and it's not both the husband and wife forms the whole. They become the whole. They're just a part of the whole. Now, the husband is expected to take the lead.
Okay.
We are provide leadership in the house, which is both spiritual and in all other ways. Now, but that does not mean that I believe that we are graced differently. And so for me, my approach is that which best suited for a particular task, a particular assignment, a particular thing to do in the home. So who is best suited for it? Who is, for instance, in my own home, for instance, when it comes to teaching the children, my wife does that much more. She has the ability to pay attention to details that I will overlook. And so when it comes to that, I let her take the lead. And I'm just supporting. And so the spiritual atmosphere in the home is a factor of the input of both partners. Both of them have a role to play in that. While the husband takes the lead, I know couples that when it comes to pray, the wife may often take the lead because she's more graced in that than what the husband would do. So it doesn't mean that because I'm the husband, at every occasion I must lead the prayer. For instance, in my house, I lead the prayer on Mondays deliberately because I want to set
The tone
for the week. And then in between Tuesday, she will do, and then by Wednesday, she will come up. I mean, it was deliberately set so that I set the tone on Monday, and then somewhere midweek, she can also bring in some vitality into our week. So both parties must have a role to play and must contribute something. Nobody has it all. So it has to be a factor of both. But when you're in a situation that one of the partner is not spiritually inclined, then the one who is spiritually inclined must take that place of leading the house and setting the spiritual tone in the home.
Interesting. Helena Wale, we talk about marriage, love being an intentional decision and a commitment. And you also mentioned about structure in your home. It appears that, clarify this for me. Does love grow automatically, naturally, without being deliberate continually? Because, if you found this person, you love them, if you get married, the expectation is that things will just, honeymoon forever. But that seems not to be the reality. So how does structure and schedule plays in keeping the fire of love burning in marriage?
Okay, I think you should be interviewing my wife at this point because she's the master of structures and schedules. My wife, my kids, they complain a lot about my wife's schedules and structure and all that, but I see the benefit. I think it helps us. The only thing that grows by default is wheat.
Whoa.
Yeah, if you plow a field, I did a bit of farming growing up. If you plow a field and you don't show up after a few weeks, you come back, it's all overgrown with weeds. You're not going to see corn or beans or anything, no. If you want those, you have to plant and cultivate them deliberately. Wow. So yes, love is not going to happen automatically. You have to be deliberate and intentional about it, right? And if you don't cultivate your field, weed is going to grow. Like, it requires no incentive. Have you ever seen anybody, fertilizing wheat? It just grows. That's the default of what comes out. So the natural tendency is for things to actually decay. If you don't work at your marriage, it's going to decay. It's like your muscles. If you don't work them out, they will atrophy. So we do have to be intentional, and structure does help. At least if you ask my wife, she'll tell you it does. But I do agree that structure helps. So you have to find activities that you do together. With my wife, we try to go to the gym together. We try to commute together. We travel together. We have a date night most weeks, so we miss a few weeks, but so like it's a structured time. Of course, family devotion is structured for the family. The thing is, like a professor rightly described, you have to put the rocks of your life into the container and then let all the other small things fit into the crevices. If you allow all the other things to go in, you will not be able to find space to fit the rocks. So yes, you have to be intentional and structured.
So how do you not prevent, what I'm laughing is this. This is funny. I hope I won't cut it off from the video.
No, you go on.
So how do you not prevent structure and schedule from being rigid and from, what I love earlier on is that, so because I've seen cases where couples structure times to have sex.
Oh, fantastic question. And so for me, there are red lines. That's not going to happen. It has come up in conversations before, and I said to her, look, forget it. That's not going to happen. And one of the reasons she says is, it allows me to better prepare. And I said, don't worry about that. That one is not going to happen. So there are limits to structure.
Okay.
Right? Structure should not, and it's sort of like, religious rites and rituals. They don't become the point of the life of faith, but they are necessary for the life of faith.
True.
If your entire thing is, if I check this box and this box and this box and this box, then I'm doing okay. You have got it all wrong. But if you don't check those boxes, you won't achieve. Like if you don't go to fellowship, you are going to stray.
Sure.
But if your entire thing is, I must go to fellowship, you are going to miss the point of fellowship, because fellowship is about building relationships and accountability and all of that, right? So structure is important, but you don't make structure the focus. The thing is to focus on what you're trying to achieve with the structure. So one of my red lines is, no, we're not going to schedule sex. It's not going to happen. That has to happen spontaneously. That's what keeps it exciting and all of that, yeah.
Well, I wish we could go more into that. Well, let's talk about some unspoken or quiet battles in marriages that eventually cause big problems. And one on my mind is money, right? Why does financial pressure put a strain on marriages and even people that you consider to be spiritual or, in quote, well-matured believers, that the pressure of finance, the pressure of money becomes a big problem or how to manage their finances?
Okay, well, I'm sure Wale will speak on that because that's. But let me say this before I yield to him. It is not naira or dollar that divide couples.
Okay. But people here in the US, they say, according to statistics that I've seen, that money is a major or the major cause of divorce.
Yeah, it's just a symptom. It's not the disease.
Okay.
There's something more fundamental underneath that is now expressing itself in handling money between two people. I mean, because you see, definitely we will have different orientations about money. You find the husband will be a spender, the wife a saver, based on a different personality. But you see, the fundamental issue that is causing that division is not the dollar, but the self. Because it's in honor preferring one another. I mean, when couples see themselves, why do they fight? I want to protect my interest. I want to preserve my pride. It's about me, not about us. When money issue becomes us, then there'll be less fight. So the fundamental issue is the self. Oh, we have $1,000. How do we share it? I want to have 7 and want you to have 3. You want to have 7 and want me to have 3. Now, but when it becomes us, how do we spend this money for us? Oh, you are going on a trip. You will need much more. I'm at home. I won't need more. Okay, you take the more. I take the less.
See.
So the fundamental issue that uses money as a point of division is the self.
Okay.
Wanting to gratify ourselves than the other person, preferring ourselves above the other person. But I think Wale would be able to provide now.
All right. The money man.
So I think, I already, spot on by saying it's more of a symptom than the disease. I think the issues that sort of come up when money is concerned are more rooted in things like trust, things like shared priorities. So what do we spend money on would immediately show what my priorities are and what your priorities are. If the conflict comes in deciding whose priorities we're going to finance. So it's about aligning priorities. It's about deciding what should we be spending money on as a family. It's also about trust, where if somebody doesn't feel secure in the relationship, they're not going to be willing to commit all of their resources to that relationship because they need to keep a nest egg for themselves. They feel like, and again, my wife is a lawyer, so sometimes we have conversations about how law, impacts marriages. So for instance, people sign things like prenuptials.
Okay.
If you're already going to say, if I die or if we separate, this is what you're going to get, this is what you're not going to get, I don't think you should get married at all. Like, what's the point? Like, you get married to someone you want to share everything with. Now, if signing prenup, basically you're saying, like, I don't trust why you're marrying me. I think you're marrying me because of my money, because of what you can get out of this. Why if you want to marry somebody who you suspect is marrying you because of what they can get out of it? Why do you want to do that? So it's much deeper than money. It's our relationship with money that we bring into the marriage, and that causes the sort of problems that really leads to the divorce rates that you see. Yeah, finance is a huge cause of divorce in marriage, but it's really about how people relate with money, whether they have the same priorities, whether they have trust in the other party. And if I don't trust that you're marrying me for me, if I think that you're marrying me for my money, after a while it will go beyond money. If I see you with some guy, that distrust is going to sort of pop up. Like, okay, if she's doing this for the money, maybe that's the guy she really loves. So trust is a fundamental issue in that scenario. So yeah, money causes a lot of divorce, but as a symptom, not as a fundamental thing.
Interesting. I'm being mindful of our time, but I have several questions flying through my head. Earlier on, you talk about it's a no-go area. Sex should not be scheduled.
In my own marriage.
Yeah.
Not going to dictate to other people.
Agreed. Why I reference that is that I read somewhere that unmarried people who are not supposed to even be having sex are having sex more than married couples.
Okay.
Why? What do you think is responsible for this lack of intimacy when it comes to sex now in marriages? And also, want to tag along another question to it is that how can couples who have experienced infidelity, how can they recover in their home?
So, as the couples not having sexual intimacy, I don't have like a personal perspective to it because I think we have sufficient, and I think sufficient is a good word because I think the needs of different couples will vary, right? Some people would need more of it, some people would need less of it. But I think my wife came into our marriage saying, every time my husband is interested, I am interested. And that sort of helps us, okay? As to why people may not be experiencing intimacy as much as they desire or should, it might be work pressure, it might be other issues in the marriage. Because it's not easy to experience sexual intimacy with somebody that you're not experiencing communication intimacy with. It's going to feel very wooden and, very transactional. Right. So I think they probably need to look at other issues. There are people who have health problems. There are people who have trauma from when they were young or from previous relationships and all that. So there's a lot that can be responsible for that. Now, the other part about recovering from infidelity, I think my perspective, and which I think, we try to base our marriage on, is that everything is forgivable in the context of a marriage, including, infidelity. My view and the way that I think about, forgiveness as a whole is looking at the story of the servants who were owing. One was owing their master and the other one was owing his colleague. The one who was owing the master a whole lot of money got forgiven, and then turned around and said to his colleague that was owing him a paltry amount that, look, you're going to pay everything you owe me or you're going to jail. And he threw him in jail. So where I position myself is somebody who has received a lot of grace and forgiveness from God and who then owes other people that grace. So if someone wrongs me, fidelity or any other form of wrong, I feel like I've been forgiven so much more that gives me access to eternal life, that it's a paltry amount to forgive if someone wrongs me in whatever way. So that's how I think about it. That's how I think it is helpful to think about it. Otherwise, if you focus on the issue itself, oh yeah, this person has, wronged me very bad, but I've wronged God in worse ways. And he has been merciful, he has extended grace. And the least that I can do is extend the same grace. And it's also selfish self-interest, because if you don't forgive, then your account is, the debt is put back in your account, the one that you owe. It says if you don't forgive, then your Heavenly Father will not forgive you. So in a sense, you're doing yourself good when you forgive. So you need to walk through the process mentally to be able to get to the point where it no longer drives your life. But I don't see any other option for people who want to live Christian lives in a Christian marriage and end up in heaven. I don't see any alternatives.
Interesting.
And maybe that challenges the theology about, if infidelity has basis for divorce and all of that. I don't think it is necessarily a basis for divorce. I think people misweigh what Jesus was saying. Yeah. They put the weight on the wrong thing. What Jesus was saying was that yes, Moses allowed this because of the hardness of heart, not because infidelity is unforgivable, but because you're so hard-hearted, you would not forgive infidelity. Moses said, well, rather you living in, that unhappy situation, go ahead and do it. But the real issue is the hardness of heart. So do I want that to be the commentary Jesus has over my life, that my heart is hard? No, I don't want to. I want to deal with that. And if I deal with that, then I no longer need that caveat that Moses provided. If I deal with the hardness of heart, then I no longer need that leeway to go in that direction. So that's what I sort of think about that.
No, sorry, please, because I have a different perspective about that scripture.
Oh, okay, go.
Matthew 19:9, it says, and I said to you, whoever divorces his wife, except for sexual immorality, and marries another one, commit adultery. Let me look at the Mark version, because the way I understand it is that, see, if you divorce your wife, except for adultery, you make her commit adultery. I don't think the exception is an exceptional clause for divorce. Oh, if you divorce your wife, you make her commit adultery. If you divorce your wife, except the purpose of divorce is that she has already committed adultery, you're not making her commit adultery. I don't know if you understand my. Mm-hmm. So I don't see that word of Jesus as an exception clause for divorce. Is trying to define the result of
what happens
of the divorce.
Okay, and I'm sure we can even, and I don't think you disagree. I think you're just, putting a different angle. And I think maybe the scripture you're looking for is Luke 16:18, where it clearly states that whoever is divorced or whoever divorces someone and marries someone else, they commit adultery. But you see, that's a next level. There are many people who get divorced and don't remarry.
True.
So that adultery doesn't come into the equation. But if they remarry, if you read Luke 16:18 as it is, then it is implying that they're living in adultery if they remarry and all of that. But that's a very, testy issue and all of that. And I'm sure we don't have the time to fully unpack that. But I think the takeaway for me is that the real reason people are unable to forgive even infidelity is not because it is such a terrible, inconceivable thing. It is more because it's of the hardness of heart that this is a red line. I'm not going to, accept this. But it is possible for you. And there are many people who have, and have continued with their marriage.
All right. Well, we'll have a part 2 of this sometimes. But Hayo, I'm curious. We are in a culture where people are looking for easy way out in marriages. How do we find the balance? And what does it mean to actually fight for your marriage?
Well, to fight for your marriage means making choices that are beneficial and healthy for your marriage. Choosing to be patient, choosing to love, choosing to be kind, because you see, like Oli said, all of these things are not going to come easily. It's a fight within you. There's an internal fight to say, okay, I prefer to eat plantain. I love to eat plantain, but my wife would prefer to eat pounded yam. So let me defer to her. That's fighting for your marriage, because all of this feeds our love life. The act of kindness, the word we speak, they feed our love in a way, and they makes it grow. They are like fertilizers. So when you choose to do things for the benefit, for the health of your marriage, instead of for yourself, then you're fighting for your marriage. Doing things that will make your marriage withstand the storm.
Interesting. As we begin to wrap up, I wish we can talk more about trials in marriages. And I think it's actually important. Wole, earlier on, you describe, or in another video, you talk about growth for you in marriage as the less you quarrel with your wife. How do you define success in marriage? And can you share one experience in your marriage that will encourage someone out there that is in a season of trial in their marriage?
Okay. It's quite a bit. Packed it to that. Again, my definitions of success are not, traditional, right? Success is, for me, measured more in who you're becoming than any other externalities, right? Because I think those things are very, like whether we have nice houses and cars and all of that. I think those things are very, and sometimes even whether our children, do well. Do we want them to do well? Absolutely. Like it would be a huge honor for us to raise kids who love the Lord and all of that. But we don't have the final say on that. We have the responsibility to be faithful in raising them. They're going to make their own journey. We have the responsibility to continue to cover them in prayer and trust that ultimately they'll make the right decisions for the Lord and continue in that decision. So success for me in marriage is more about who my wife and I are becoming. Are we building a better union? Are we getting closer? Okay. It has nothing to do with what we own, where we've been, or any of those sort of things. Because I think the purpose of marriage is for two people to become one. Right. So if we achieve that union, then our marriage is successful. On a secondary level, if our kids follow the Lord, that's probably the most, important thing next to us achieving, the oneness that marriage is designed for. Something I'd like to say, just to touch on the question, the previous question is, it's extremely important if you're going to fight for your marriage to recognize that you need to extend grace. Scripture says that the spirit lusts against the flesh lusts against the spirit, and that the two of them are contrary to one another, so that we cannot do the things that we want. That's describing you as an individual, that even you are not living up to your own expectations of yourself. Why am I holding my wife to a higher standard than I'm holding myself to? Like, if I'm struggling within myself to be all that God wants me to be, why am I not extending? If I'm able to give myself grace that I'm still working at it, God is still helping me. Why am I not able to extend the same grace that my wife is still working at it? God is going to help her. Okay, so for me, that's what fighting looks like. We're all, in a struggle to continue to follow the Lord. And we need to recognize that other people are in that same struggle. And that it is as we get better and better at following the Lord that we build a better and better marriage. And so to finally come back to triumphs, I think we've had many, many happy years as a couple. We've tried to deal with contentment, so maybe we've not had a lot of struggles in that regard. We've tried to live within our means, but we've seen consistent growth. I teach a finance class for couples, and one of the things I always say to them is, my wife and I have budgeted every year of our 18 years that we've been married. And we can see that our earliest budgets were always in the red. We didn't have enough money to cover the things we wanted to do. But over the years, we've seen a surplus. And it is in trying to be faithful in a little that we see the incremental growth that allows us to now have as much as we need at this point. We know we're still growing. There's still a long journey ahead of us. But just working together has seen a better year after every year. We know there are still trials ahead to face and confront together. But as we continue to build on the rock, we know that the rock will outlast the storm. It says, the house that is built on the rock will be standing when the storm is gone. It's one that is built on sand that will be gone. So we know we'll outlast every storm that is ahead.
Yeah, interesting. Hayo, as we wrap up our time together, what can you share a common transition period in your marriage that can serve as an inspiration and encouragement for a couple out there that are going through a trying season of transition?
Well, marriage in itself is a lot of work. And there's different seasons. There's a season of lack, there's a season of abundance. There's a season of joy, and there's the dull moment. Now, but what is important, which has helped me, is that I believe that every season has a reason. And I'm quick to say, God, this season, I want to be over this season quickly. I want to be over, I want to go through this season wisely and purposefully so that I can pass this stage and move to the next. I don't want to repeat this class. I remember there have been seasons that will find it difficult to pay our children's school fees.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I remember a particular time, and it started because of something this year and the unexpected development that a friend paid our son's school fees.
Wow.
When we got married, we didn't start out in our own house. I mean, a rented place. We were squatting.
Really?
Yeah. I remember that our first 4-5 months of marriage was squatting. We had a room in someone else's apartment that we lived in. And after that, we moved to a rented apartment. And after that, we moved to our own house. I mean, but you see, what people see is where we are, not where we're coming from.
Wow.
And nobody jumps into greatness because everything that jumps up will come down. So life itself is in stages of growth. And growth is important. And to grow requires all manners of inputs that will produce a desired output. So life comes in diverse seasons. So it is important to maximize every season because it determines the next place you are moving to.
Wow. And on that note, we'll wrap up our session of the voyage today. So as you continue the voyage in your own marriage, whether you're in a season of trials, or seasons of transitions, or season of triumph, one thing is important, that go back to the basics, the foundation, and that is crucial to help you navigate each season of your marriage. This has been an exciting and a fun and interesting conversation. Till another time, keep enjoying your voyage.